Welcome to Performance Talk with your host, Yul Gordon and Chris Costa, where professionals discuss the latest news and developments in the profession and all areas that affect sports performance, strength and conditioning, nutrition, recovery, performance, and much more. Listen now to your host and this week's guest, next on Performance Talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yul Gordon. I am here today with Mr. Dean Somerset. Gene, thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Hey, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I'm a personal trainer, kinesiologist, and clinical exercise physiologist. I've been working in the industry for 20 years now. I've worked with people all the way from Olympic, Paralympic, professional athletes, semi-pro athletes, down to recreational people. And my major area of expertise is more injury post-rehab. So there's kind of a gray area between where physiotherapy discharges somebody who has a known injury and they're expected to get back into training, but they usually don't have the direction to be able to train effectively, train hard, while making sure that they protect those areas that might be a little bit more vulnerable. So that's kind of a niche that I was able to develop on my own. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. That's an area I've worked in off and on for the last 30 plus. And I find that to still be an area where there's still a little bit of confusion, if not with the practitioners, at least with the participants. Those folks who would need your services, or those folks that should be recommending those types of services. For example, I know of a young woman who got released by the doctor, went straight to practice that day, and her sport coach was, well, why isn't she's supposed to be, she was released, she's cleared. Well, she's cleared to do what?
Yeah.
And so talk to our audience a little bit about that from your perspective. They hear enough from me already.
Absolutely. So it's interesting when you talk about being cleared to participate and cleared to train. Typically, the doctors will get that to a point where it's like, let's say that you broke a leg or broke a bone or something like that. They're looking at, did that bone heal enough where it can tolerate basic loading? Was there calcification going on? Is the bone remodeled? Is it still an open fracture versus a closed fracture? If they had to put hardware in, is that now solid? That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for whether or not you have the specific strength to get on the floor and be competitive anymore, because that's up to the coaches, that's up to the support performance people, that's up to everyone who's on that side of things. From a medical side of things, they're looking at, are you going to re-injure this with the very basic type of training, or is there like an increased risk of doing that? Now, we already know that if somebody's been injured before, the risk of them being injured again is considerably higher. And the type of injury is going to dictate what that risk level is and how frequently they've been injured in the past. But a lot of the time, let's say that we have somebody who, they might not be an athlete, but they're athletic. Somebody who's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they want to just be active and have fun, but they get an injury. And then when they're trying to get back into the game, they have no idea where to start because they don't have a dedicated coach, a dedicated sport performance team, a physiotherapist on standby, a sports medicine doc that they can refer to. So they just go into the gym and they say, well, I'm just going to start off by running 5 miles, or I'm just going to start off by doing bench press, or I'm just going to start off by doing these things, without knowing whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing for them. So my goal in post-rehab is to be able to say, okay, you've had this injury. What are the precautions that we need to be aware of? And we need to still build that area up. We need to still build up your capacity to do stuff. We need to still stress that area to get it stronger, the way normal connective tissue should be stressed. But we need to do it in a way that's taking in mind what that injury actually was and trying to prevent it from happening again. And that's kind of a big step that a lot of medical discharge is missing. Like you said, a lot of people would be like, here, you're cleared to go, and then right back into practice, full gas effort. They might even be playing in the game later that day. If they've been off 6 weeks, 6 months, doesn't matter. They're just right back into the mix. So being able to have somebody who can identify, you've been injured, now let's build a plan of action to get you back ready to play, and also get into the game effectively so that risk of re-injury is gone, or at least as limited as possible. That's been a huge step for a lot of people.
Well, that's great information right there. That's one of the points that I would make off of what you were just kind of dovetailing off of what you were speaking of there is the doctor's concern is the medical restoration of the injured, whatever it is.
Mhm.
The formal rehabilitation or the physical therapist or PT, they want to get you back to general function. Can you walk without a limb and without pain? Can you do certain things? If you're going back to something more than that,
Mhm.
then right or wrong, you need to do something more than that before you go back to that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that's in there, but I think everybody understands what I mean.
Absolutely. I mean, the analogy that I always use is you want the engineer to build the car, you want the mechanic to fix the car, and you want the driver to race the car. So you can't expect the driver to know how to build the car. It's just not going to happen. Me as a trainer, I'm not going to know what the surgical procedure is going to be to get the person into recovery from an ACL. I can see it, I can look at it, but I'm not going to be the person who's going to be qualified to do that surgery. The engineer isn't going to be the best driver for the car. The surgeon isn't going to know what to do in rehab or in strengthening performance. I train orthopedic surgeons, I train doctors, I train people in fitness just because they do their thing really well. I do my thing really well. If I say to them, we're going to do some plyometrics, they'll look at me and be like, what's a plyometric? But in the strength and conditioning world, that's our bread and butter. We understand that. They don't even touch on that. But at the same time, I would have no idea what gauge wire would work best for a semitendinosis, an ACL, or like a bone tendon bone graft. They deal with that stuff really well. So we can't expect each side to know what each side does, except to just be aware of what that is. But even then, like you said, the doctor is going to worry about the medical side. The physiotherapist is going to worry about acute injury mechanisms. They're going to worry about pain management, inflammation management, getting you up to a baseline. And then the strength and performance coaches have to take it from there. Just going from discharge right back into the game, they're missing two big, crucial, vital steps.
Yeah. When being a private practitioner like you are, understanding some of the challenges that go with that. I've been down that road as well. Talk to our audience from a perspective of wanting to work with other. Let me say that differently. From a perspective of you not being everything. So when you refer them out to other folks, that doesn't mean you're quitting on them or giving up on them or sending them somewhere else. Let's talk a little bit about that. And in this world that we're in, keeping clients has been a thing since the 1970s. And stealing clients has been a thing since the 1970s.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of go down that road professionally a little bit and understand so we can understand how you deal with it. I know how I deal with it. I've often encouraged my athletes to go train with someone else to get something new. I'll tell them, hey, look, go over and train because, I have a little network and we kind of all like each other and it's a big enough piece of pie for everybody to get a slice.
Yeah. And honestly, I've always viewed my career as if you do the right thing by people, you'll never have a bad reputation. You'll never have a bad experience. Right. So if that means that you're not the right fit for that person for the specific thing that's going on, referring them out only makes you look better in that person's eyes. And it's only going to build your professionalism. So case in point, I've had a lot of clients who have shown an interest in doing things like Olympic lifting or advanced calisthenics. And one of my friends who's a great trainer is a Canadian National Certified Olympic weightlifting coach, also a Canadian Certified Powerlifting coach. Who better to learn from than that? I'm good in what I do, but at the same time, if they want to specialize in that, I will send you out to that individual. Now, some of those clients stop training with me because they really enjoy doing that thing. Great. Right. That's fantastic. I am so happy that they found something that really sparks a fire in them and wants them to keep going. I'm not worried about having that client stay with me against their will and not getting the quality of service that they're looking for.
There you go. The quality and the, if you're a true professional, he's probably reciprocated
100% every single
anyway.
time. Yeah. She's amazing. When she's had problems with certain individuals, she's like, can you take a look at this? And I will definitely like have a consult, a couple of sessions, and then recommend what to do based on what I see. And sometimes it's just like, yeah, I'm going to work with this person for the next 6 weeks or 3 or 6 months. And then they go back to training with Hannah, the original coach. But I do that with a lot of my physiotherapy patient clients who come back and forth as well. We have a physiotherapy clinic in the gym that I work out of, and I will send people into physio and be like, you need to go do this because this is not a fitness related problem. This is not an issue that fitness will solve right now. You need to get direct treatment. And then when they go into that individual, I'll find the physio and be like, hey, how was Mike? What should I do? What should I not do? They've got an entirely different view into the room of anatomy, physiology, and injuries that I do. Way different skill set, way different training, way different education and experience. And sometimes they say, don't do these exercises for this next little while. Okay, cool. Then they've got other arms, they've got other legs, they've got core, they've got other things that we can work on in the meantime.
Right.
It's rare that I've sent anybody off to a medical professional and they say, don't train. In fact, most of them are like, no, you have to keep training, but we have to do it this slightly different way.
Yeah, we've had, pre-op training, post-op training, just all kind of stuff, when we refer out over here. So it's one of those things where understanding when to refer out and who to refer to is critical, but the reciprocation is the part professionally that I like to see growing and becoming a real thing now, as opposed to, everybody, having the claws and the knives out, trying to keep up one client. There's plenty of clients out there and a whole bunch of people that need our help.
Understandably, I mean, there is a protectionism element to the business, but at the same time, most trainers are going to be maxed out with 20 people. And most trainers are going to be like, yeah, 20 people is the maximum that I can work with if they're coming into me twice a week, 3 times a week. But honestly, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that could use your service. So at the same time, you could be delivering really good quality service and you lose a client. There should be another one lined up ready to take that spot without any hesitation whatsoever. And it's really easy to get new clients if you want. One of the things I talk to with a lot of clients or a lot of trainers about is, do you ask for referrals? Do you have a referral network set up with the places that you send your clients? Do you have the physiotherapy, the chiropractic, the massage, the general practitioners? Do they send you people on a regular basis in response to you sending them people? You should be forming a two-way street with a lot of these professionals that do complementary services to what you do, simply because it works better. And if you're not, then you have to be able to open those bridges and be able to be like, let's send some traffic back and forth with each other to get better quality results for the people we're caring for.
Go ahead and expand on that a little bit. What's your general steps in doing that?
So typically, like when I first started training, this was back in 2004. So the internet wasn't as powerful of a thing. So a lot of it was me learning on the fly what to do when contacting medical sources. Now, obviously, if you contact a medical source, there's things like freedom of information access and information protections that you have to be aware of. I didn't know any of that. So I would just reach out to a physiotherapist and be like,
HIPAA regulations and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's going to be different by each nation. So Canada and the US are similar, but we just call it different things. So when I reached out to them, they'd be like, I can't talk to you about this. Understandable.
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing. It's like, okay, cool. I'm interested in working with people in this element. What can I learn from you? Can I come shadow you in any way? Can you come train with me to see what I do? I'll offer you 5 free training sessions just so that you can come see what we do or see how I do things. And if this is something that resonates with you, if you can send people to me, great. But I want to keep sending people to you because you're doing great work and I can see the results in what I'm doing. So then I had to learn how to contact people with medical information regards, get the client to sign a document saying, Dean is able to contact Dr. So-and-so about my shoulder injury. And then we were able to actually have those informed discussions. So learning along the way made a big difference to just be able to say, okay, well, this is the thing. Now, the main reason why that was happening was because I was working in a commercial gym that catered to a lot of downtown executives who were between like 30 to 70 years old with a lot of injuries on their own. And I had no idea how to work with any of them at that time. So I would reach out to a lot of their medical professionals and be like, what do you want me to do with this person? How do you want me to be an extension of what you're offering and your treatment plan? I don't want to go against that because obviously, It wouldn't help the person at the end of the day. And if I can be essentially like an arm of what you're doing, it's going to make your service seem better. So what can we do to make this the best quality service that we can and help people in the best way where we're communicating back and forth to make this something that actually works really well? If I'm your assistant by proxy, that's kind of the goal. So if we can make this something that's easy, yeah, the bigger the value that I can provide to that medical professional, where it's something that builds on what they do and is not seen as competitive but complementary, then the greater the chance that they're going to want to work with me in the future. And if I can offer them a chance to see how I do things, if I can go see how they do things and we build that relationship in a really deep way, then it just becomes a great thing overall and we can establish that rapport more effectively.
So let's talk about, I think we touched on it a little bit. Let's talk about how you got into this profession.
How I got into the profession. So I played every sport under the sun and I was absolutely terrible at all of them. I was like the worst athlete. Like, no, I'm serious. Like I grew up in a small town and I was the kid at the very end of the bench in a small town. Like you would expect that, like there was 12 kids that tried out for the team and 12 kids that made it. And I was the last kid picked off the bench. And part of it was I was injured a lot because growing up and playing sports, you're just going to be somebody who has no idea what you're talking about, no idea what you're doing, and going through growth, you get injured. So I got injured a lot. I was really terrible as an athlete. The athletes in the family were my two older brothers, but I tried really hard. And I figured the best way to come through with some of these injuries and become better as an athlete was probably to get a little bit stronger. So I fell into weight training, loved it, wanted to pursue a career in it. And guidance counselor said, well, you should probably go into kinesiology then. So I got a degree in kinesiology, got some advanced certifications, started falling in love with the element of working with people through an injury process in a gym setting. I thought about going into physiotherapy. That didn't pan out at all because I didn't want to work in a clinical setting. I thought about going into medicine and that really didn't pan out. When I wrote the MCAT exam, I got the bottom 20% on the physical sciences, but I got in the top 5% on the writing sample. So the world was kind of telling me, yeah, maybe you should be a writer too. So that kind of led down the pathway to writing a blog and eventually writing a book.
Okay, well, we're gonna come back to your book in a little bit later on, so you can tell us where to find it and what it's about and all that. But before that, so that's how you got into it. Once you got into it, what made you say, okay, this is going to be my profession? We know you were an athlete. We know, you took these classes and you went, but what was that one thing? We all had that epiphany and it said, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to make a living. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to be of service to my fellow man.
Yeah. So part of it was the first year that I was working in a commercial gym. It went really well. I was able to get busy really quickly, but then it kind of stopped because I wasn't focusing on like sales or service or developing a rapport with my clients as much. It was more just becoming like a factory mindset. And I got to the point where like most of my clients fell off and I didn't know how to renew them or keep them coming back or getting new clients. So I almost quit and decided to go and start working in the oil fields up north from where Edmonton is. So I decided I need to learn more about like psychology and sales and different approaches to doing things. And at that point, it kind of opened my eyes up to say, fitness can be exactly what you want it to be, and it can be exactly what you choose it to be. So I wanted to make my career in fitness something that wasn't just like a cookie cutter programming thing or something where I followed a recipe. I had the ability to make it whatever I wanted it to be, which is one of the really cool things about the fitness industry is that there is no one prescribed pathway. You can create your own pathway. And this is something that I really was kind of drawn to. It's like, how do I make this different? How do I make it stand out? How do I make it unique? How do I make myself a one of one? And if I can do something like that, how do I get better at that element of it? Where people view me as a resource that they can go to, or view me as the go-to in my region, or view me as somebody who knows what they're talking about when it comes to injuries, whether it's back or knees or shoulders, or somebody that they would actually want to work with. So that kind of led me to develop that concept of post-rehab in my mindset and how I was able to work with a lot of people. And it's something that I've been able to expand on quite well and kind of take that mindset of rehab and kind of flip it around and be like training intensity, sport performance, but focusing on not hurting yourself in that mindset.
Well, I think, the medical profession got it right when they, made their first edict to do no harm. I mean, that
Yep.
all of us should adopt that. Somebody walks into your office, your shop, your gym, your whatever you call it, anybody's that's in this profession, and you're going to be working with them physically. The first thing that they should know is that you're not going to hurt them.
Yep.
And the more
Yeah.
you
I make sure I let everyone know.
the more you
Yeah.
talk to them,
Every time when people come in,
right? They should. The more you talk to them, the more comfortable they should get that you're not gonna. Hey, I'm safe here. Yeah, I'll go ahead
Mhm.
and push myself here because I know he's not asking me to do anything that I can't do.
100%.
That
And a
helps.
lot of that just comes back to communication.
Right. And it comes with the buy-in too, as they begin to buy into what you're talking about, and all that safety and trust that you build. That's the
Mhm.
thing. That's the thing. So the next thing that we talk about a lot on this show is the actual, just the broad view of the profession. And the general question I always ask is, what's your broad view of the profession now, what it was 10 years ago, and what you think it
Mhm.
should be?
So now I think it's kind of one of those areas where it's so pervasive in popular culture that fitness and fitness professionals are there and are worth working with, that it's never been this way before. 10 years ago was like the beginning of online training and only a small handful of people were doing it. 20 years ago, when I first started off, it was when you went into a gym, they might have one trainer, they might have two trainers or a small team of them. But now you go into any gym and there's like entire dozens of trainers working with dozens of clients. Training as a fitness professional is, you've essentially hit past a tipping point in the popular culture. So it's something that's kind of ubiquitous out there. 30, 40 years ago, if you went into a gym and they had a trainer, that was rare. It was something that you rarely ever saw. Or
I can tell you from experience that was non-existent. You didn't train with a trainer back then. You trained with a guy that had been there
yeah,
for a while, or from the
exactly.
Flex magazine, Muscle and Fitness, Pump. That's where you got your programs, and you watch the other guy do them,
Yep.
and you just kind of fell in on him.
Yep. Or there was the one guy who had the kind of the cult of personality, but also had like the 24-inch arms, who trained everyone and just charged him like $10 a month for programming and showed you what to do, and that was about it, right?
Exactly. So,
But yeah,
and to be honest, in the early '80s, I started off as one of those guys.
Yep.
Um, did I know what I needed to know? I did not. I know what I did.
Yep.
And as soon as, the thing for me was, as soon as I figured out that, hey, I don't know enough, I stopped training people. Because I didn't feel comfortable progressing people to something that I was not familiar with. So
Mhm.
that's kind of, I knew the physical education side of it, because way back in the
Yep.
olden days, that's where it started. But until I started working in the sports medicine field and the exercise science field, you know, didn't know. So I wasn't
Yep.
comfortable. But so where is it going? Where does the profession need to go? You told me
So
what
I
it
think that,
was. And
yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. Like post pandemic, a lot of things have changed too. More trainers have been looking to get into online coaching. But I think that a big thing a lot of trainers need to understand about that is that if you actually enjoy people, working with people, and being in a gym, online training is probably not going to be the solution for you. If you want to have mobility, freedom, scheduling availability, if you have family or people you have to take care of, online training is a fantastic option. And if you can make it work, it's great. But you have to communicate entirely differently online than in person. You have to schedule yourself differently online versus in person. And the client expectations are entirely different. But I think that there's kind of a renaissance of people wanting to have in person training because people want someone to actually care about them. They want someone to actually be in front of them, showing them how to do something, and be involved in coaching. They want to get something physically beneficial from it. I always talk about how with online coaching, it's a reactive form of coaching, whereas in person, in front of you coaching is more proactive. I can see you doing something in front of me right now, and I can tell you do this differently, and it has an immediate impact on the set. Whereas with online, I'll see the video of you doing the set and then tell you after the fact, you need to do this differently the next. Right. So the style of communication is entirely different. I can't tap you on the shoulder and say, flex this muscle. And then you can say, oh, I know what that's supposed to be now. I have to write it out. I have to do a video. I have to show you how to do it. It's different online. And I think a lot of trainers are starting to realize that, yeah, this is a different job than being in person with clients. And it's a little bit of a different energy. It's a different environment. So it's great to have as an option, but it might not be the one for you. And if you want to give it a try, go for it. And if it works for you, I'm fantastically happy for it. Go for it. I do both. I do in-person and online. And I can tell you that a 12-hour day of in-person training gives me energy. A 3-hour stint of going through online coaching check-ins drains my energy. And it's entirely different reasons. But at the same time, it's one of those kind of things where there's so many options now. That's also one of the reasons I'm never really worried about AI taking my job, because nobody is going to be able to be a machine that comes over and taps you on the shoulder and says, flex this. No, you're doing this wrong. Right. You're rounding your back. I want to talk to you about this. This cue doesn't seem to be working for you. Let's try this. I want you to think about it this way. AI is not going to be able to flex in those ways. And it's not going to be something to match the learning style of the individual. And it's not something that's going to be able to pick up the coaching style that I use with my clients. So I'm never worried about AI.
That's what puts us in a unique position. And I've said something similar to that in the past. Probably sounded more like I'm not worried about a computer taking my job or doing this instead of me because they're not me. Yeah. And that's the simple part. Plus the other part of that is the relationship part.
People want to be connected with people.
Yeah. Face to face in a live setting, we're building a relationship. If we're only face to face when you're exercising and I don't see you any other time, and we don't get to watch each other's facial expressions closely, see our body language, see me walk away and talk to somebody else and come back. We don't get to see that. So that relationship is not solidified in a way that is the same or as permanent to me as a live relationship.
Huge. And for a lot of my clients, like coming to the gym is the best part of their day. I get to see them at their absolute peak every single day. So how could you not have a good time when you get to see people living their best life, enjoying themselves, seeing progress in the way that makes them happy, having fun, and getting after it, doing something I love and that I love making people do.
Yeah. So what type of facility do you have?
So I'm an independent contractor working out of a gym. It's a 25,000 square foot commercial facility, but I have my own business and run my own thing through it. So I'm able to use the entire space as I see fit. There's a physiotherapy clinic attached. There's massage therapy. There's psychological. So it's kind of a co-op unit type thing. But it's great to be able to not have the overhead of running my own facility.
That would be that's a big thing. And as we're talking about that, and that was a great segue, by the way. Tell me about getting started. And I don't know how it is up north there, but I know here in the States, man, it's tough sometimes for these young guys to get started. And you're coming out of college with your degree, maybe your first child on the way, and a job they want to pay you $14 an hour.
Yep. In many cases, you're lucky to get that.
Right. Sometimes they want you to do it for free for a while.
Yep.
So talk to us about the professional part of that for you and how you navigated and managed that and what you suggest to young professionals today.
So I think that I grew up in the industry starting off in a commercial facility. So I think that pretty much every trainer should at some point work in a big box gym. And that's partly due to you don't have any overhead costs, but they also have an existing pool of people that you can draw from rather than trying to find something on your own. And typically they will have a process in place to teach you things like sales, marketing, client retention, how to actually go through and track sessions, stuff that you don't necessarily learn about when you're in any certification or degree or diploma program, but it gives you a chance to learn how to train to start. And it's something that pretty much every trainer should spend some time doing. If you want to go and work in a private studio or a sports medicine clinic or anything like that, as long as they have an overview system to teach you how to do things in a certain way, great. But if you come out of university or come out of any post-secondary or certifications and you're like, I want to open up my own place. Well, hopefully you have 100,000 in the bank to be able to throw away, because that's probably what it's going to cost to build out, to get all the equipment, to set your place up, to do all the legal, to do all the insurance, to do the leasing, to do everything like that, and have your doors open on day one for business. Now, if you don't have 100 grand to kick around, yeah,
And
depends.
there's still no guarantee.
Yeah, and that's with 0 clients, right? That's just to open your doors.
Yeah.
That's just to be able to have the city come by and be like, okay, you are a certified business. You can open and start charging people money for things. But then there's so many other headaches that come with that. So one of the reasons why I wanted to be an independent contractor without my own facility is I actually like training people. And I wanted to continue training people. If I wanted to own a business, I would have to stop training people. If I wanted to run a facility, I would be spending most of my time running the facility, making sure that that was the case and running smoothly. And I would have to give up a lot of training time for training my clients. So I already knew that that was something I did not want to do. So why would I do it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of people don't realize that, and when they start thinking about that, they don't understand. There's overhead, and there's serious overhead, and and when I say serious, I mean the serious part of the overhead is the insurance and the legal stuff. The significant part of the overhead is the lease or rent, whatever you want to call it, and keeping the place clean and all of that. So all of that, with all of that in mind, how many times a day are you really going to train? How many clients are you going to see in a day? Because it's not going to be, a bunch as much as you want.
And if you're not the one who's training clients, who is? So then you have to hire staff. You have to subcontract out to other trainers. You have to make sure they're doing their job properly. And if they're not, and if they're creating problems, you have to manage those problems. And you have to put out all the fires. You have to answer all the emails. You have to follow up with all the client requests, all the member requests, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, if I want to train clients, running a gym is the worst thing I could do.
Well, I've never heard it put that way, but that is a great point. As a great point. Here's the other question I have is, how do you feel? I often tell people, they say, well, fitness and sports performance are different. I say, yeah, they are. But without fitness, you don't have sports performance.
Yep.
Because I don't, it's not a higher level by profession, but it's for the individual client. You're trying to do something more than be healthy and fit. Now you're trying to perform. So what level, how do you approach that level of, you got to actually walk in the door and now they're trying to accomplish something that, a small percentage of people do, go to the next level, whatever that is.
Yeah. And part of that comes down to, like, obviously everyone is an athlete. They just don't know it. And everyone is looking to train for health. They just might not want to. So if you have an athlete who's only concerned about performance, but they're constantly injured, constantly sick, constantly not able to train and perform, then you have to have a talk with them and be like, all right, something is off. We got to figure this out. And we got to be able to dial something back. We got to figure this process out to get you onto the field. If you're always overtrained, you're never optimally trained.
Right.
If you're always undertrained, you're never optimally trained. So if I have an office worker, they want to see results, I'm going to train them like an athlete. The exact tools that we use might be different than somebody who's getting ready for the Olympics, or the exact tools of somebody who's trying to max out on a regional powerlifting meet. So it might be something entirely different, but at the same time, progress is progress. If I have somebody who's coming back from an injury, their tissues will respond to progressive overload in the same way that my elite athletes and my hypertrophy clients, my fat loss clients, all of those clients, they respond to the same way, but the volume and the intensity might be different. So when I look at how I train everyone, it all operates off of a continuum: progressive overload, specific adaptation to imposed demands, the basic foundation, fundamental bedrock stuff that we all base our training programs on. We build on that. So if I have a client who is looking to make the national team for track cycling, when are your key events? We build backwards from that, and we program and periodize their programming based on that. If I have somebody who's coming back off of an ACL reconstruction, we have a timeline that we establish. We build backwards. We program where we want to be in different stages. So I can put together a training program regardless of the person's goals by knowing what stage they're at and how we want to go forward, and letting them know what that continuum actually looks like for them. Does that mean I'm going to be back squatting max weights, astrograph with one of my ACL rehab clients 6 weeks post-op? No. But it means we're going to have a logical linear progression of increasing the imposed stress on that individual to make sure they can go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 5 to step 50 to step 1,000. And if that means that we get them back on the field or we get them into the office and playing with their grandkids, either way, that's their goal. I want to work towards your goal, knowing where you are right now and counting backwards from when the goal attainment is supposed to be achieved.
How do you get everybody to understand that? We understand building, if you and I are standing here talking, I know exactly what you're talking about. Foundation, framework, filler, and we use different terms sometimes, but we mean the same thing.
Yeah.
You have a client that walks in, high school student, and she says, "Hey, I want to play collegiate soccer, and I'm a junior right now, and I'm struggling with." But then you look at her, and you look at her and you go, "Okay, I wonder how healthy she is and what her fitness level is." That's just your first. You can be fooled by the eye test, but that's the first thing. You go by what you see. We all do.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work it?
So part of it is like in the consults, I'll ask them like, what's important to you? What do you see as being necessary? Where do you want to work? What do you see as being, because this is your body, you have your own lived experience. I could tell you what I see and what I feel, and then that's just going to be my opinion. But if it doesn't resonate with that individual, it doesn't mean much, right? So if they say, I need to work on my VO2, okay, cool. Let's go through a VO2 test and see what it's looking like. And then we can see whether or not you measure up to the standards based on collegiate athletes in your sport. So if we do a VO2 test and it comes back saying you have a VO2 of 35, but the average VO2 of a college Div 1 athlete is 55. So, okay, we got a lot of work to do here. And this is a big hill to climb that's really far off. You're going to need to really focus on this to be able to build your VO2 up enough to be able to be at the standard. Is that something you think is going to be possible? And if they look at me straight face and say, yes, it is, because I'm going to do this, okay, cool. Let's work on the tools to make you have it. Here's what we're going to need to do. And here's what I'm going to need from you. Here's how we're going to need to progress this. So part of it is being able to have them tell me what their goals are, and then me be able to show them what it's actually going to take to hit those goals based on how far away they are. So if I have a client who wants to be a regional powerlifting champion, what are the regional standards for squat, bench, and deadlifts? How close are they? If it's something where they need to double their scores, that's a really big hill to climb.
Yeah, it's a big ask.
And it's probably not something that's going to be within their scope. So then we have to be able to say, okay, well, what are you willing to fail? Are you willing to give this your entire best effort? And what happens if you don't make it? And then what happens if you do make it? You just qualify for regions. Is that going to be good enough for you? Or do you want to go into this knowing that you're going to be getting the gold medal? Because we have to have a talk about what's realistic and what's not realistic. Some people are built for certain things. Some people are not built for certain things. That's fine. I'm not going to be a gymnast. I'm 6'2", 250 pounds, used to play football, basketball terribly. I have the mobility of a clam. It's not going to happen. I used to be able to jump.
Not a clam, man.
Yeah. I mean, they don't open, right? Yeah. It just doesn't happen. Right. So for me to, if you ever see me,
I've never heard that one before.
There you go.
Of a clam.
Yeah. I mean, we do clamshells, but have you ever tried to open a clam? Like you will not pry them open without a knife, right? But man. Yeah, like if you ever see me do a back bend, like one of those back overs, call 911 because something went terribly wrong. I should not be doing that kind of stuff. And I'm probably hurting a lot. So
Houston, the clam is open.
that's an entirely different place.
Oh man, that is
Yeah. But yeah, like not everyone is going to be able to do what they put their mind to.
right.
And I love to be able to tell people it's like, I want you to hit your goal, but I want you to know what your goal should be and how to do it. So if you are someone who wants to hit Div 1 and you are so far away from all of the standards of possibly getting in there, and you're playing off the bench in your local high school, you are probably not going to get looked at by many scouts in Div 1. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go to junior college, play a bit there, and do really well, see a couple of really good performances, and get picked up by Div 3, Div 2, maybe Div 1. But that's something that is probably going to be a better case solution for an individual versus trying to say it's Div 1 or nothing. If you just don't know what your goal actually entails, and I don't show you what your goal entails, then I can't build trust in you to be able to hit that goal. And sometimes you have to be brutally honest with people, right? Like, I am not going to be a starting center in the NBA. I'm 6'2", and that's not even close. Like, I might have been center when I was playing high school in Rossland, BC, but that was because I was literally the tallest kid on my team. If I go anywhere and find anyone who's over 6'2", I'm not going to be centered. So it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's a lot of guys that play center in high school at 6'3" or 6'4", but they weigh 280.
Yep.
They're better suited to be a tackle.
Yeah, exactly.
Opposed to being a center on the court. Although they may be gifted enough to play basketball, but you're talking about a different level.
Yeah. And they're also going to be playing an entirely...
I didn't mean to sidetrack the conversation, but yeah, I got you.
Yeah. The 6'2" basketball player in high school is the most overrated basketball player out there because no matter what you do, you're playing the wrong position in high school and you're going to be having a hard time going when it comes time to go on to anything else because you're probably going to become a point guard and you've never played point guard in your life. Right. You're probably going to be shooting guard and you've never played shooting guard in your life. You've been down on the post, moving left and right, and you have no idea how to run around the perimeter. And that's me. I had no idea how to do any of that kind of stuff. I played down, I got rebounds. As soon as somebody outsized me, I wasn't able to manage it properly because I did not know how to grow 6 inches to get above those other guys' heads.
Right. Well, that vertical challenge is something I've dealt with my entire life. I played football in high school, yep. College, and I wasn't what was considered little or light, just short.
Yeah. But I mean, some of the best running backs aren't that tall. They're just built as wide as they are high.
Yeah. Well, I was in that category.
Yeah.
But needless to say, when we talk about working with different types of athletes and even those who may not be, sport athletes that we talk about on here most of the time, I want to bring this up before we get into the book a little bit. How do you help athletes walking away from sport manage that physical and health side? That's something I run. That's something I get questions on a lot. Is, hey, coach, I'm not an athlete anymore, but I was an athlete 3 years ago, and I can't figure out how to make this fitness thing work. Because they're used to training hard, but they don't have time for that same intensity, that same time, that same, everything. So how do you manage that?
A big part of that is having a goal and a reason why they're training. So when they're an athlete, what are they training for? Playing time, getting on the field, getting on the court, doing all that. So there's a direct linear correlation between I do this so that I can do that. When you're doing it for fitness, you don't have that. You don't necessarily see the playing time. You don't see the time on the field. You don't see that as clear. So it becomes something where you kind of have to change up what their goal set is and what they're actually training for. So it might be something where you get them into competitions in a different manner. You might have to build competitions into the training program itself. It's like, all right, we did this last time. I want to see if you can do this over here. Or it could be something where you're able to say, okay, well, I want you to try and book time for an event. I want you to be able to go hiking. I want you to be able to do this run. I want you to be able to go and play pickup hockey with your friends. I want you to be able to set these things, these goals, and use that as motivation for your training. So anything that we can do to get the person to maintain that athletic mindset of I'm training because XYZ. It's not just I'm training and that's it. It's I'm training to do something, because that mindset is the biggest change that a lot of athletes have to go through. It's like, well, why do I want to exercise if I'm not competing? If I'm not trying to make the team? If I'm not trying to get playing time? If I'm not trying to show up for the coach? Like, what am I training for at that point? Well, still compete. Still find a way to keep your game. Find anything you can do to be able to motivate yourself, to be able to get back into the gym, do another workout, get back on the ice, get back on the field, do something that gives you that chance to be able to hone your craft, sharpen your iron, and feel like you're actually making that progress. And like you said, it might not be something where they're training to maximum intensity or maximum progression because they're doing a little pickup game with their friends versus trying to make the national team. It's entirely different, but you still want to show up and be able to trash talk all your buddies. You still want to be able to show up and show your spouse or your partner or whoever you're with that, yeah, you're somebody who is still somebody that is athletic and physical and able to do what they need to do. So it's not something where you need to find that the goal is I need to make this. Sometimes it's finding the small goals along the way that add up to a really good life.
So what you're telling me is that at some point it's the psychology of it all.
It's huge. Because, I mean, it's not the physicality that changes when an athlete retires. It's their mindset. And that's one of the hardest things that so many athletes go through when they retire. It's like, what now? They're at a loss. They could build a training program. They could go through a workout. They could do all that stuff because they've done it before.
Right.
But the reason why has changed so much. And that reason why is what's been driving them for so many years of their entire life. That when that why is no longer there, finding a new why is hard.
I've told a bunch of athletes, in the past that when you walk away, this is not something that you were, so you're not losing anything that you ever were. It was something that you did. So psychologically deal with it in that manner, because we've all done something before and we don't do it anymore. Maybe somebody used to be a nail biter and they stopped. They don't do that anymore. Whatever the case may be, fitness, health and fitness is part of who you are.
Absolutely.
Sports and performance training is part of what you did or do. There's two different things. So that health side psychologically needs to be internalized and you need to go forward from there, as opposed to having an extrinsic, motivator out there that lets you do whatever.
Yeah. I always say that you are an athlete. Your chosen sport is how you express it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with that. I'll jump in the back. I'll jump in the back of that ride and go.
Yeah. And you can express it any way you want. You can do any sport you want. You can do any activity you want, and you can express it how you choose.
So let's talk about, I might do curling.
Yeah.
Cause it every time I see it, I'm saying, man, I can style and profile at that game.
There you go. You can strut like Ric Flair up in here.
Oh, anyway, again, I've gotten sidetracked. Let's talk about your book, man.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners, how you bumped into this book, why you wrote it, and those kind of things, and then obviously where they can get it.
So this is a book that was something that's been a long time coming. I've been writing my own website blog for a number of years, and a lot of it's focused on things like how do you train around injury, how do you train through injury, written from a training perspective, not from like the clinical perspective, but helping people to understand you can still lift weights, you can still get strong, you can still do things from a large range of injuries, medical conditions, and all that kind of stuff. So Human Kinetics reached out to me and they're like, we have an idea for you. We want you to write this book. We want to bring in a doctor of physical therapy. We were connected with Dan Pope, who works at Fitness Pain Free, and he also works at Champion Performance in Boston with Mike Reinhold, and does really good quality stuff where he talks about like injury rehab mechanisms, but from a training perspective. And he's a huge believer that, you got to get strong. You have to lift weights. We're going to do a treatment, but then you're also going to get under a bar and start back squatting. We're going to get you deadlifting. We're going to get you doing all this kind of stuff. So we wanted to write a book that was geared around what does the average person need to know about injuries, and when should they tag out to a medical professional? When should they just plow ahead with their training?
That's critical.
And when should they just adjust the exercise to make it fit what they're going through right now? And a lot of it is not necessarily like, here's pain is bad, pain is good. It's what does that mean to you? And how do you adjust around it to make it feel like it's something is productive for you? If you have tendinopathy, you're not going to lift non-painfully. You just have to find a way to deal with that pain in one way or another.
Right.
But at the same time, it's how much of that pain are you willing to get? And does it mean good or bad things when you get into it? It's not a book on pain, but it's a book on what do you do when your shoulder's a little bit cranky? What do you do when your back's a bit cranky? How do we adjust the exercise to make it so you can still train with a big trainable menu and still get the results you're looking for in the gym? A lot of my clients and a lot of the people I know might live rurally where they can't go and have an mid-afternoon appointment and show up to a sports doc or to a physio or something like that. Like I've got some clients that live 2.5 hours away from the town, and it's just not something where they're going to be able to do that.
No,
So I wanted to be able to.
That's not a daily commute.
That's a day to get there, have the appointment, and a day to get back, right?
Right.
Like my parents-in-law, they live in a very small rural town in southern Saskatchewan, where to go to a medical appointment, it's 2 hours each way. So it's just not going to be something for them where it's like, oh yeah, if you hurt, go and see these people. They'd be like, next. That's just not an option. Or if they're in the armed services and they're deployed, are they going to be able to just be like, look, I can't do this now. I have to go see my physio. I can't do my PT today because my shoulder's sore. No, it's just not going to work. So we wanted to write a book to help people understand what injuries actually meant and how do you train around them effectively, to give people the power to make the choices for themselves.
I mean, I haven't, I plan to actually go grab your book, but that is a subject matter that I've been interested in and delved into off and on over the last, 15, 20 years, because there's always a use for it. You know what I mean? And you mentioned some things there where I thought, wow, okay, well, you're not always, I use these terms kind of loosely, but you're not always injured. Sometimes you're just hurting. Or as you said, your shoulder's cranky. Or in my case, my neck's cranky. Is it hurt? No, I know what the deal is. I know it's I'm going to live with it. So how do I work with it? If it's going to be there, how do I work with it? So you wrote this blog. How much of the book came from doing the blog? Not you took it from the blog and stuck it in a book. Meaning just, okay, I've been writing this blog. How much of that blog said you need a book, you need a book, you need a book?
Not a lot. And the way I always viewed a blog was that it was like getting reps. So when I would write a post, I would learn how to write more effectively and put my thoughts down more effectively. And the posts that did the best were the ones that I really honed in on how to write. So it wasn't necessarily like, I'm going to take all of the stuff from my blog and just translate it into a book. It was more like I was using that as ways of gauging how to write about these topics and ways of creating that communication so that when it came time to write a book, I was able to generate new content, as new as it can be, about injuries, anatomy, and exercise, but that I had enough reps behind me so that I knew I could do it properly and write well to communicate the message that I was trying to communicate, which is kind of the hard thing when it comes to actually writing. You have to communicate. It's not something that's really this most straightforward process where it's like, do this exercise. It's like, no, you have to assume the person has no idea about exercise, but is still able to get the benefit we're looking for from a written word. And not everyone is going to read and comprehend what you're talking about equally. So you have to write incredibly clear and concisely to make it something that works well for them.
That's not easy to do.
No,
because it's not. It's let's be real. We're not writing a book for each other.
No, this is not a book that I meant for clinicians, practitioners, trainers. Trainers and practitioners can use it because it's going to be good information that they can use. But anytime we used a technical term, I wanted to define it and say, this is what this means, and make it so that people could learn more about what training involved. Concepts like autoregulation we included, but we talked about what is autoregulation. and how do we make that work for you as the end user? So it's going to be something where no matter what an individual's knowledge is on exercise and fitness, when they pick up the book, they're going to learn a lot. And I've always believed that people have the innate ability to learn if you give them the right tools to learn properly. So we wanted to give people the tools to learn and take away a lot from this book and not feel like I'm dumbing it down, not feel like I'm talking over them, but giving them the tools to make sure that they could train and learn properly to do what we were trying to get them to do.
What's next for you, Dean? Got anything?
What's next?
Got anything in the stream that we need to know about?
Well, the book is out February 28th. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters Indigo, anywhere that you can find books. I actually saw it's in Hudson's too. So if you go in through any of the airports, any of those quick stop places, you'll be able to see that. After that, I've actually got a client in like a half hour, so gonna have to go get ready for that.
Immediately.
Yeah.
We are wrapping up. So
yeah,
that is so next immediately he has a client, ladies and gentlemen. So we're gonna let him go. It was great having you on, though, Dean. I appreciated the conversation. We probably could have went for another hour or two, but we don't have that kind of time. But listen, we're gonna keep up with you. I'm pretty sure I'm getting the book.
I'd love to hear what you think about it,
because I have an interest in that subject matter. But hey, listen, man. Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been Performance Talk with Yul Gordon and my guest, Dean Somerset. And we're out.
Thank you.